Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy Wednesday, people, and welcome to another episode of the Vuka Nazo morning show. My name is Sihle Ngobese, aka Big Daddy Liberty. Want to get in touch with us? Find us on our website at www.bigdaddyliberty.com. All of our social media details are in the descriptor of this video. With that being said, how about we get straight into the news? All right, to begin here this morning in Gauteng, in Ennerdale, at the Fred Norman Secondary School, where there's a bit of an altercation, quite a big altercation, because the community, the parents in the area are involved, and it stems from an altercation with one parent with a teacher in the area. That teacher has now subsequently been placed on some form of leave, or at the very least temporarily removed from the school while the matter is being investigated. The matter itself, of course, is an altercation between one irate parent and this teacher, with the parent, the grandparent in a sense, accusing the teacher of initially a bias or an unfair treatment towards her grandparent, to which that accusation blew up to racism after the altercation held in class. The altercation itself, according to the grandmother who was speaking on radio, indicated that, it was born out of having not been able to reach and get a hold of this teacher in order to discuss this matter, prompting her, in her view, to then confront her in a class where she could reach her. And that confrontation, boy oh boy, looked like this.
You say you don't like coloureds, so why don't you teach? Why don't you teach where you come from? So where did you teach?
I don't like coloureds. I will never wake up liking coloureds like you.
So why?
Because you guys are rude.
Yes. So why don't
you guys don't have manners?
Why don't
As
you
a
teach?
woman, you come and scream at me here.
Why don't you teach where you come from?
Is this what
why
you
don't you teach where you
You
come
don't
from?
come here.
Where do you teach where you come from? Huh? Please read. Why don't you teach where you come from? No, it's fine.
Jonah,
And you calling me trash?
You are. You are trash.
So what are you?
You are trash.
What are you?
You are
What
trash.
are you?
You are trash.
What are you?
I don't care what you
What
think
you
I
are?
am, but you
What
are
are you?
trash.
Don't point me.
Open the door.
You don't point me.
Open the door.
You don't point me.
Open the door, my
You
love.
don't point me.
No. I
You're
said
taking your
you
breakfast
are
out of your
trash.
children.
So what?
You're taking your breakfast for
So
school.
what do you want to do?
So shut.
What do you want to
So
do?
shut.
What do you want to
There is
do?
nothing I can do.
There's nothing you can do. You will come and teach that trashy child of yours. You will also.
Now, as you can tell from that video, and it's an odd one, because clearly, there is a case of prejudice and racism in here, insofar as the teacher, oddly and bizarrely, saying that she doesn't like colored people. Meanwhile, she teaches in a predominantly colored community, and the class of kids, representative of the community, are colored children. So it's a weird and rather odd self-own by the teacher. And I call it a self-own because it was the teacher that recorded this and proceeded to sprout racist slurs, or rather just to make racist statements like that, and berate a parent who, again, I'm not necessarily going to defend the barging into the classroom. I was merely stating what led to that. And of course, there would have been a better way. Surely the parent could have dealt with this. But the fact that that altercation then happened and the teacher proceeded to berate the parent, call the parent all sorts of names and slurs, and then proceed to even boldly, oddly claim that she doesn't like colored people, is stupid and genuinely dumb racism. As most racists are, they are dumber than a bucket of shrimp. And this teacher clearly has put her foot in her mouth in that regard. So it's no surprise then that, parents in this area were very irate, to the point where the school governing body has joined into this issue, looking into it, demanding accountability. And let's just say things were tense, as the teacher herself had to be escorted off the school grounds by the police. Have a look at this.
Guys. There she is. Your racist speak.
Now, as I said, things are very, very tense, and I think parents are rightly enraged by this issue. It's flat out racism, and often, you know, I know this country, right? Racism is our second national sport. Everything is racist according to the people who trade upon race and see race and racism in everything. But often, when you then ask those people to present evidence of the said racism, they don't. But in this case, there is actual evidence. You and I just watched it, and it likely will form part of the inquiry against this teacher, or at the very least, the inquiry that the education department has now announced that it is looking into the matter. Let me actually give you a response from the education department. This is from, of course, a News 24 piece where the spokesperson said the following. The Gauteng Education Department spokesperson, that's Steve Mabona, said an investigation had been launched into the circumstances surrounding this incident, and the outcome would be communicated in due course. He said the teacher was on a precautionarily removed from the school until further notice, and his quote, he goes on to say, quote, educators must always be exemplary figures at our schools by maintaining a high command of good conduct and teaching our learners with dignity. We also implore parents to use appropriate channels to address their grievances rather than resorting to other platforms. Schools are institutions of learning, he says, and they should be treated as such. Now, firstly, I commend the department for just taking that stance, but, you know, rightly pointing out that there is a need to look into this and that investigation should lead consequences, at least, the dishing out and doling out of consequences. But I want to say this on this matter. The conduct of that teacher is completely unacceptable. I want to repeat that. The conduct of that teacher is completely unacceptable, because it beggars belief that that teacher thought she could record herself saying something as racist and dumb as that and then expect to face those same learners who she's just openly said she has a disdain for, a disgust or a hate for, if you will, based on their race, and pretend as if that would have been a normal situation. You see, this is the problem in this country, where people don't manage their emotions, people don't act like the adults that they are. And you see these situations boil over in these emotional situations like these, where inevitably those who are racist will then show their true colors in this particular instance. And in this instance, I'm glad she did, because I'm hoping that real punishment will go her way and she'll find herself out of a job, and yes, not teaching the very learners she clearly has a hate for based on their race. It's unacceptable that we harbor people like this in our society, and worse yet, have them around our children. And in this country in particular, the racism against minority groupings often, and I'm hoping it won't happen in this case, is dismissed with a slight tap on the hand. It's disgusting, and it should not be tolerated. Whether that racism is against minority groupings or racism period, there is no place for it in our society. All right, from Gauteng, I take you to KwaZulu-Natal, indeed deep Zululand, where the ongoing saga around the Zulu royal household took another turn today, with the traditional prime minister of the Zulu nation coming out. That's Nkosi Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the traditional prime minister of the Zulu nation, coming out and actually saying, hang on, the events we saw over the weekend with the rival king, that's Prince Smagade, who held that kraal ritual, you remember, after which he declared himself the king of the Zulus. The Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi is saying not so fast, because, you know, as you'll all know, the formal processes had seen the installation of King Misizulu Kazwelithini installed as the next king of the Zulu nation, indeed, with him scheduled to have his entering of the kraal ceremony on the 20th of this month of August. That's this weekend, in fact. Now, a lot of people have been wondering, what is this entering of the kraal ritual? Is it a crowning of the king in a sense? Well, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi also doing the hard work of clarifying what the ritual actually means, and that it's insignificant insofar as the claim made by Prince Makate of what it did for him, that is crowned him as king, but actually significant in the sense that for the already chosen king, it is a means of the king effectively communicating with his family's ancestors to notify them of the or the coronation of King Misizulu. So let me, without waffling that off, actually read what Prince Mangosuthu said. I get this piece, of course, from the independent group who, basically quoting Mangosuthu, said, "It has been presumed that the ceremony, or that this ceremony of Ukungeni Esbayeni amounts to the anointing of the king of the Zulu nation. However, this is not the case. It is instead closer to in nature to a traditional prayer and ritual wishing the king well and declaring the people's loyalty to his majesty the king." That Prince Mangosuthu added, this ceremony does not install the king as he is already on the throne. Speaking, of course, about uMisizulu Kazolithini, but it is an important moment to express loyalty. End of quote. I think that settles this part of it, but of course, with this being an ongoing matter, an ongoing rivalry, will we see more counterclaims? Will we see Prince Makate make another move? Perhaps will we see him try and disrupt the ceremony, the official ceremony of the actual ordained Zulu King this weekend? Who knows? So, we're going to have this conversation in better detail tonight at 7 p.m. I've invited journalist Sihle Mavoso from the independent group who has been covering this issue with great detail. We'll have him explain the politics, if you will, within the Zulu royal family so that we can have a firm grasp on this issue and understand exactly why King Misizulu is the Zulu King, rightly chosen Zulu King, and how the events with King Makate is not only a thorn in the side, but poses a real risk of creating confusion within the Zulu nation. That's tonight, Wednesday at 7 p.m. Don't miss it, the BDL show. Okay, I take you to Skukuza this time, where a rather sad story, but one which requires, I think, a solid investigation. The finance minister, Enoch Godongwana, finding himself in a bit of hot water, having been accused, of course, of sexual harassment by an employee of a luxury game farm and spa, where he had allegedly been holidaying, and during what was said to be a massage or some sort of spa treatment, he allegedly, assaulted this woman sexually, and stuck his hand, according to the allegations, on her private parts. Now, this was an unwanted, of course, exchange, which has seen this woman, according to reports, having laid now a charge against the minister. The minister himself now having responded to these allegations. I saw this in Business Day, where he says the following: "I've always upheld and respected the rights and dignity of women, and this allegation goes against everything I stand for." That's the minister on this particular issue, where his spokesperson continues to say that at the time of the alleged incident, Godongwana was in his room. This is what he alleges, with his wife, and said there is no basis for the allegations. Toyana, who's the minister's spokesperson, goes on to say that the minister had not received official communication from the police and thus could not comment any further. End of quotation. All right, so there you have it. The minister himself denying these allegations. But for me, I read the story in the context of the already high cases of gender-based violence in this country. It's simply unacceptable that someone as senior as this, a finance minister of all people, is accused of something like this. It's actually just, it's disgusting, to be honest. Now, I don't care what people do in their private lives, and their sex lives in particular, I care the least about, especially if it's consensual. But the issue here is this action, as is being alleged, wasn't consensual, and this woman has every right to pursue this matter, and I hope the police conduct a thorough investigation, that the truth comes out. And if the minister is, if there is credible evidence against the minister to having done this, then the prosecution really should throw the book at the minister in this regard. So we'll keep an eye on this particular story, and we're going to crowd out the politics around it, because opposition parties now have climbed onto this. Cyril, they've even linked it now to Cyril Ramaphosa, because Godongwana is a key ally of Cyril for me, there's no politics in this. It's about the protection of women in this country, and especially it's the protection against those who hold power from abusing the weakest and the most vulnerable in society. That's how I'll view this issue, and that's the basis in which we'll keep an eye on this story. All right, folks, that's another episode of Vuka Nazo, this the Wednesday edition of it. Do you want to get in touch with us? Find us on our website at www.bigdaddyliberty.com. On the website, you can also find out how you can support us financially. Some people are doing as little as 100 Rand a month to 150 Rand a month. It goes a long way in helping us produce stories, and hopefully we'll start hiring our own journalists to produce hard news. So please, please, please support the channel. Help me realize that dream. With that being said, if you're watching this on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and of course the bell notification so that you're notified every time we release the episode weekdays from 7 a.m. With that being said, thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow morning on Vuka Nazo.